Hello and welcome everyone to our MPM Skills 101 monthly webcast series. My name is Eric Desmond from the Global Customer Success Team and I will be your moderator. Today's presenters are Neil Belfer and Michael LeBeau. The material covered today will include AD management with Active Administrator. This session will last 30 to 45 minutes. It will be recorded and we will be sending everyone on the registration list a link to the recording within 48 to 72 hours for future use. Feel free to ask your questions through the chat so they can be addressed by Neil and Michael from our Quest team. Please note, if you choose to put a question in the chat, your first and last name will appear there. We're mentioning this so you're aware for basic privacy reasons. With that, I'll hand the webcast over to Neil and Michael. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, based upon where you are. This is Neil Belfort speaking. My counterpart, Michael LeBeau, and I are both solution architects within Quest MPM Platform Management portfolio of products. And the product that we're going to focus on today is maximizing the use of Active Administrator. Myself and Michael have gone back and forth because we've been dealing with Active Administrator for many years. And we wanted to talk about, to a degree, what people may not know about Active Administrator. So this session will provide a greater understanding of settings in Active Administrator that you may not be aware of. I'm going to be doing most of the talking on this. Michael's certainly going to chime in with his opinion during this presentation. He'll also be monitoring the chat conversations or QA if anything starts coming in. Now, everything we're going to talk about when it comes to Active Administrator is on version 8.6 or newer. The 8.6.2 is the most current version, but 8.6.x or newer is where the focus is going to be. Because we really want to touch upon a couple of new settings that were added within Active Administrator that people may not even be aware of. So I'm going to bring up the traditional Active Administrator console, and you may notice provisioning certificates. Yeah, those are new features within the application that come inclusive from the standpoint of 8.6 as well. The certificate component is really where I wanted to start because we've had quite a bit of traction associated with it. But I'm going to mention one other thing. It does come inclusive, but if you're running a version earlier than 8.5 to go from an upgrade path, you may have to reach out to your AE to get a new license key code. This way you don't get prompted for it. It comes inclusive with the application.
Correct. And Neil, and especially our users of this solution, if you're upgrading from a pre 8.5 version, you're using the same license, which will be valid throughout the 8.x genre. As soon as you get to 8.6, if you're using an older license, the free items, which include the certificates and DNS, will not show up until that new license has been issued. So please don't hesitate to get to your AE to grab it.
Yep, not a problem. Now, I did want to talk a little bit about certificates because certificates is something that, would you believe, gets a lot of interest. And since it is our first foray into certificate management, somewhat, we've really tried to simplify this first feature within Active Administrator. The idea behind it in its simplest form is to primarily give you the ability to search certificates, report on certificates, and deploy certificates. Within the application, you delegate which machines you want Active Administrator to watch over. Now, it's designed for server-based machines. You can point it to an OU to grab all certificates on servers within an OU as well. It checks once a day, roughly 2 a.m., whatever time zone Active Administrator is installed in. It's going to take that certificate information and it adds it to the Active Administrator database. This way you have the ability to now search for certificates, report against certificates, and even set up notifications for expiring certificates. But the idea behind it is to collect those certificates that you deploy on a regular basis into the certificate repository. So think of the certificate repository as the single authoritative resource for certificates that you have to deploy on and report on frequently, monthly within your organization. It's as easy as adding a certificate to bring in to that repository, and it's just as easy to choose to deploy the certificate. You would selectively choose what certificate store and how many machines you want to deploy that certificate to. The search feature works. Yeah, Michael,
Hey,
what
Neil,
would you add to that? Sure.
on the repository, I always think of the repository as a nearline storage for your certificates. But to go out and look at every certificate I have and add them onesie twosie into the repository seems like it would be a large task. Is there an easy way that I could go in and look at certain machines and selectively add search to the repository quickly and easily?
Oh, you certainly can. You can pick up any of the machines that you're watching over and see all of those certificates. Then you would be able to highlight as many certificates as you would want at one point and simply give it a right mouse click and add to repository. But I always look at the repository, and it's what Michael just simply said. I look at it as the authoritative, status of your certificates within your infrastructure, or the authoritative status of where you want your certificates to be within the infrastructure from that standpoint. Because you don't want to have to check every server within your infrastructure to make sure that they're running that version of that certificate. If you can put all of those current certificates into the repository, you can see them from one glance right here. So it makes it a little bit easier. But certificate searching and certificate component now comes included with version 8.6 or above within Active Administrator.
Wait a minute, before you go on, Neil, you said certificate search. You mean I can search for certain criteria and certificates?
Yes, you can. And you can put in that criteria. So in this case, we'll remember searches that you have done in the past. But I like always doing, you can do them based upon keyword. You can do it in quite a few different ways. Search computers, search for certificates, or in the repository as well. It's going to see which machines you're monitoring, and now you would be able to put in one of these search filters to be able to narrow down on where those certificates might be installed.
Nice. And I'll have wildcards so I can use different equations.
Yep.
So equal to, do you have contains and things like that?
Sure. Without a doubt. And you could also set up notifications. I did mention that at the beginning, notifications based upon, but you don't have to get, so bothersome with it as well. Well, we only want to notify on soon to be expiring certificates.
Excellent. All right, thanks.
So, yeah, no problem. So the certificate component is now included with version 8.6. Now, even when it comes to security and delegation, now a lot of people, this is primarily one of the root areas that you're utilizing within Active Administrator. Well, what are some of the features that people that we speak to are not taking aware, much, use of, much interest in? Well, one of them happens to be Active Security or template delegation. Well, we all know within Active Directory, you can delegate down through the native delegation wizard. You can right mouse click, delegate security inside of ADOC. But what do we bring to the equation when it comes to a little bit different? Well, I have a delegation of permissions set up here. And you can see these delegations are color-coded. By the way, we color-code these permissions. Black is a default permission. Green is a templated permission, whereas blue is an explicit permission. You can always see which templates are delegated here. Now, what does a template bring? Well, a template gives you the ability to conglomerate permissions together to create a single template. It also enforces security against that. Whereas when dealing with native permissions, if you remove a permission, that permission is gone. It's not coming back. You can see in green, I already have templates individually set up here. One to create user objects, one to reset passwords, unlock user accounts. Well, what happens if I wanted to combine this and create a single template, maybe called Help Desk? Because I want to give my Help Desk the ability to do this. Reset a password, unlock a user account, create users. I can highlight these existing permissions right here. Once I do that, I can now create an active template off of those existing permissions. Maybe I would call this Help Desk, for example. Okay, because now when it comes in, it's going to also ask me what category I want to put it in. Well, I've created my own category for specific templates that are associated with my domain. It's going to show you the actual permissions that you're giving. Now I have created under active templates a template called Help Desk. Now that Help Desk consists of all these permissions. So if I get anybody who starts within my support department or help desk, service desk, and I want them to have these permissions, I already have the template in place, and all I have to do is add the delegation to it. Very easy. I can also set up an expiry date or a start date on these delegations as well. But before Michael adds something, because I know he's going to have something to add, I mentioned self-healing, enforced. Yes, if I would go in and remove these permissions, for example, here they are in green, okay? Just accidentally, someone sees them natively and they're removed. Well, what's happening right now? Well, you can have a notification sent out as well, but within a 30-second window, those permissions are going to come back, and here they are, because they're being healed by that active template. Michael.
So the templates are enforced, and to remove those permissions, you'd have to remove that user from that template, correct?
Correct. Those permissions are going to keep coming back unless I physically remove the template from this delegation in Active Directory.
All right. So another question is, when you're creating that that template from your existing permissions, I noticed they were all user objects. Can you mix your object classes in a template? Because
Sure.
Help Desk usually does more than just users; they do groups and computers too.
Sure, certainly. Any available security delegation you would be able to do. We also have the ability to go down to the attribute level, which you can easily see right here by a delegation I put on someone's job title and telephone number.
So you have your generic and your explicit permissions that are available for delegation as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Nice.
And, and while I'm here, I just thought of something that I take advantage of a lot of times. And when I take advantage of it in front of somebody who has Active Administrator, they're really not aware of what you're capable of doing at this point, because it provides a lot of information. So you can see I'm just highlighting an OU here in this infrastructure. Well, we do have all these tabs right here. What do all these tabs do? Well, one of them is the View tab. Now I would be able to view all users within this infrastructure. Now, when I'm viewing all the users in this infrastructure, it is showing me a lot of information, such as password age, if I wanted to, when the account was last logged on, and I can arrow over for this information. Or maybe I just want to see last log on timestamp, and I would be able to bring this up just as well, and I could see this information. I could actually schedule this report to be sent to me on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. I could export it out from here as well. But it provides a lot of information that you can see in one simple report without having to go through each individual user, such as password age. You can see this account happens to be one of the original accounts within this domain, because the password hasn't been reset in roughly 8 years. But here I reset one day ago on my Azure account. So it's something that is kind of a hidden feature. Along with these icons, whenever you connect into Active Administrator, it automatically connects to an individual DC. Well, I'm connecting to my 2012 DC. Maybe I would want to connect to one of my newer DCs. I can simply click Add find another DC, add that DC to this, and now I would have the ability to connect not just to my 2012 DC, but to my 2019 domain controller as well. And what are these? Yeah, sure.
And Neil, one of the things with Active Admin is I've noticed there's several different places where you may want to go in and add your individual domain controllers. They're not automatically added. Just keep in mind that if you do have a domain controller and you want another one, you might have to add it to the UI. So that's thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, it just happens to be a hidden feature that for some reason gets overlooked at this point. And you may have seen when I brushed over some of these, I can RDP into that DC from here. I can even reboot that DC if I need to at that time. So we're just going to simply back out of that. I'm going to move on to a couple of other features. Now, you may have seen some other features inside of this, even past presentation. You can certainly email us and we'd be able to address some of those questions that you do have. Wanted to move on to auditing and alerting. Because would you believe this happens to be a question that we're asked on when it comes to our flagship auditing application. We have a flagship auditing application called Change Auditor. Why I call it flagship is because all it does is audit. That's it. It audits multiple platforms. And that is missing a feature that's constantly asked of, but Active Administrator has it. It's response actions, remediations against an auditing event. A lot of people are not aware that that exists within Active Administrator. Now, if we're going to take a response action against something, you would figure it's going to be under alert, and that's where it is. Yes, Active Administrator offers auditing of Active Directory. It's agent-based. Also something, since I mentioned that it's agent-based, is people ask all the time, do the agents have to be deployed to domain controllers? No. It is the default method, but do they have to? No, it doesn't. You can deploy it through a pooling agent. A single agent on a member server has the ability to watch up to 5 domain controllers. But going back to the response actions, where is that hidden? Well, there's an alert tab here. When dealing with an alert tab, you would see we have about 7 or 8 built-in alerts, based upon primarily critical activity that's happening. But it's easy to create your own notifications or alerts. And here is one that I have created. NBell demo 10 in 5 minutes. Okay, well, what is that? I've created one based upon 10 logons off in 5 minutes. You can create thresholds on these things as well as actions. When you would want, if I wanted to create a threshold that met that, I would go to the threshold, click add, and then enable it. Here's what I'm looking for. Logons being failed. Alerts for this event will not be sent unless 10 happen within, what did I say, 20 minutes? Did I have it backwards? 5 minutes. Okay. So now I would put that in as 5 minutes. And now I have set up a specific threshold of events to match the title. Now, when it comes to action, we call it action instead of remediation, as it is called remediation in other parts of Active Administrator. Now I can have a program, script, PowerShell, PostScript run, even a batch file run against that. I'm sure most organizations have a lockout policy when it comes to their accounts. You put in 3 passwords wrong, you're going to get locked out. Well, what does that lead to? Well, you also probably have an unlock policy, where it's going to unlock that account after a period of a couple of subsequent minutes. We want to be able to give you the ability to actually track when something is a user that came out of a liquid lunch and on a Friday, forgot their password 3 times in a row and then their account will unlock. We want to try and look for that bad actor. Maybe a service account that keeps getting locked out and keeps refreshing and then keeps getting locked out. So we're trying to scope it or target it based upon different types of things. So we really wanted to make sure that alerts are based upon remediation and thresholds. Now, going also, yeah, Michael, something to add.
continue. Auditing is fantastic, and we're putting an agent either on the domain controller or in a pool, as you say. So, exactly are we auditing with that agent?
Yeah, we're primarily targeting the security events. So we're not pulling in all of your event logs or even from a security standpoint, application, none of that are Windows logs.
Mhm.
We're targeting the events themselves in the security event logs and then bringing them into the backend database.
And if we have certain events that are numerous and we want to ignore them, is that possible?
Yes, yes, it certainly is. I mean, we're going to pull them in. It really just depends on what you want to do from a reporting standpoint. Now, you can set up different levels of what you want to audit. I usually recommend keeping that at the default, and a lot of those are done from the configuration level. So this is a field that many people do not, venture into. Primarily, it's used a lot of times for role-based access, but if you wanted to customize certain things, you would do a lot of that right here. And in this case, I believe some of this would be under the agent installation section. That's where it's going to install and activate at this point. But some of it is here, and it's going to say, what do you really want to enable from a notification standpoint as well? So quite a bit going on at this point. And this is where you would configure, and we even did mention certificate configuration. You know, how often you want alerts to follow through and stuff like that. How much do you want to pester or notify the user that this is potentially happening as well? So a lot is done under the configuration. Yeah, Michael.
So under the configuration is where you can really control exactly how the information is going to flow within Active Administrator.
Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. And someplace also that when I speak to existing AA customers, they rarely go inside of it. They keep it pretty much as default. And you'll notice role-based access would be a key, especially if you wanted Service Desk to handle some of these things. So you can see here is an Active Administrator console where I am logged on with every benefit that I'm capable of having due to my key code, rights within the application. Here would be what the console looks like for a limited user. So if I logged in with one of my help desk administrators, he's going to only see specifically what you're delegating him to see.
So the role-based access controls what users are able to see in the UI.
Exactly. Couldn't have said that best. It's not a security disseminator. It is just simply hiding. The actual permissions, what they have, is based upon their memberships in certain groups.
Or the templates.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, going through past auditing and alerting, one of the features we really wanted to focus on a little bit was group policies. Because when I speak to organizations, they'll use it, but they really basically use it. Now, one of the things that it should be the first step when it comes to any kind of group policy object, group policy modification, because when I go to your group policy objects, you're going to see every GPO within the infrastructure. Every GPO it's going to enumerate. You would see what it is linked to. You would see the security associated with it. Well, what else can you simply do right here? Well, this happens to be one of the best hidden features that a lot of people are not aware of. So I have a group policy here called Admin Test 2, and I have one called AA Test 3. Well, if I highlight both of them at the same time, would I be able to compare them? Yes, I would be able to. And we color coordinate what's going to be of common and what's going to be of difference. Now, based upon the size of the group policies, this could take a little bit of time. I can even add another target GPO. There's always one source. So if you add 4 group policies here, it's not comparing all 4 against each other. It would be comparing 3 targets to one source. Well, what are we looking for here? You're primarily looking for what you believe white. And in essence, here's the color legend, which shows yellow, green, and red. But what does white show? White's going to show group policy configuration settings that are the same. Whereas in red, I can see they all exist in this one, but they don't exist in that one. but white's going to show the group policies which are identical between both. So very helpful in cleaning up group policies to consolidate them down.
Not to mention you have the list of the number of identical differences. And,
100%.
now, Neil, one of the things that comparison is all over the GPO section of Active Administrator. In other words, almost anywhere you can use that comparison, and it's quite handy because if you do need to compare, and you can print it out and roll it across a desk and have people look at what's actually going on within the GPOs, which is great and handy. But one of the things I don't see is the ability to see a link order, because a lot of times when you're diagnosing GPOs, things may not be happening in the order that you think they are. Is that possible?
Yeah, you could always go to the links and see the link order as well. So if I don't have too many group policies linked within this infrastructure, I've always deemed that in test environments a great way to screw up a test environment, because we're playing and manipulating so many group policy configuration settings and testing for customers. The only way I can pretty much guarantee that I'm not going to hose my own test environment is to link none of these group policies. I have one group policy linked on AA logon auditing, and we didn't touch upon that Active Administrator actually gives you the ability to audit logons. And I'm talking about audit logons from an interactive standpoint. When a user locked the machine, unlocked the machine, when they logged off, logged on, it is agent-based. An agent, a very small agent, would need to be deployed out to every client machine. We have an ADMX template which points that agent to the Active Administrator server, and subsequently those events will find its way into the database. So it's also a feature within Active Administrator. Seldom people know that Active Administrator agent is in the Active Administrator install directory. Can't miss it. It's in its own folder called Workstation Logon Agent.
So what you just said is that with Active Administrator, we can scrape the DCs and get the logons there. We can also deploy an agent out to the endpoints and get the user session data.
But that's really the only accurate information, where the DCs are primarily more tracking authentications than anything else.
Nice. Neil, what about that GPO by container? My favorite places to go because the volume of information that it has.
The volume of information is also very popular. As mentioned, I really don't have too many linked here. Mm-hmm. So because of that, we're not going to see as many group policies as you would want. But there was one other thing, and I thought Michael was going to lead me to that, because I know he is a big fan of the GPO setting search.
Oh, I was getting to that one.
We were discussing it beforehand.
Yes,
we were thinking of which keyword to search for. Michael gave me a logon keyword search. I said, I'm going to use my camera keyword search because I have that configuration setting tested in a lot of group policies. But think about a Google keyword search for group policies. You configured a configuration setting. Okay, that's good. You configured a setting within a group policy, and you don't remember which GPO it happens to be in. Okay, well, in that case, all I have to do is highlight all my group policies. But where did I configure that setting? Well, in this case, it's an administrative template, and it contains the keyword camera. Okay, now that I have that keyword, all I have to do is click search. Now it is going to show me every group policy that it contains a keyword of camera. Now it's primarily, in this case, the same configuration setting, but you can see how many group policies that I have it tested in. Now, as always,
you can also see the difference in each of those settings and each of those GPOs.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Now, what happened if I had a setting months ago that I really liked, and then some other administrator advised against it, and we took it out, and then things started to break, and then that guy left, and I need to go find what that setting was? Do I have the ability to go look in the history?
Yes, you do. Now, it's something I'm going to point out here, because Michael did mention GPO history right now. Now, what is GPO history? Well, primarily GPO history is, and here happens to be a configuration setting from my new active admin install that I did a few days ago. GPO history is comparing version controls. So whenever there's a change made to a group policy, Active Administrator automatically takes a version control backup of it. Well, where does that differ from something that's called GPO backup? This is just taking a version control, whereas the GPO backup is backing up the entire group policy. That can be scheduled as well, whereas this is not something you would schedule. Our foundation service is automatically watching over this. So if I wanted to see what's changed here, I can highlight these and show changes. Now, this should be specifically the Active Administrator configuration setting that I changed, pointing my agent down. So if I go down through this, we'll see it right here. Here is the template that you publish, Quest Software Active Administrator, Enable Workstation Audit Log. Well, here it was, that was my original Active Administrator server. Now you can see it's on Apps 5. Well, I had to change that setting inside that group policy so I can point my logon agent to my new Active Administrator server. So you can see that, but if I needed to, maybe I got it wrong, I would be able to now just roll it back to that pre-change. So we're watching with group policies from that standpoint as well. Now, moving past a little bit, I wanted to talk a little bit about recovery. Now, I'm not going to spend much time on recovery, and there's a reason why. Because, let's be real, Microsoft gives us some sort of quasi-recovery application or recovery ability. It's called the recycle bin. Now, it doesn't come enabled by default. You have to enable it within Active Directory if you want to have it run. And that also has to run per DC. So it would have to be enabled on each individual DC. Well, within Active Administrator recovery, what does it offer? What does it bring different to it? Well, yes, we're not just limited to restoring objects out of a recycle bin, because now, for an object to end up in the recycle bin, it actually has to be deleted. Yes, that's true. We don't have that dependency. We're not dependent upon an object being deleted. Yes, if an object is deleted, we have the ability to restore it. But we're working at the attribute level. Maybe there was a mass attribute change. An administrator added 50, 100 people to the wrong groups, okay, and does not remember what their original groups were. That wasn't part of it. Well, we could just roll those users' attributes back. Maybe there was a mass title change. You have something tying into Active Directory, and they put in the wrong title for a couple hundred employees. No problem. You could always roll back that attribute. Maybe a DNS zone was accidentally deleted. Would you believe that's something we're backing up? We would have the ability to do that. And I could even give a quick example now. An organization was running a script which would move users to OUs after a specific period of inactivity. Okay, that happens to be a feature with an Active Administrator, but they were not utilizing Active Administrator to do this. And that script ran accidentally, and it moved a couple of thousand units. It was an educational facility into an organizational unit called deprovisioned. Okay, so they were in stage 1 of being deprovisioned. They made an accident. It shouldn't have ran against these potential OUs. Okay, well, now what are they supposed to do? They've got to get these thousands of accounts back to their original OUs. Active admin to the rescue. We're not just looking at restoring deleted objects. We had the ability to restore those thousands of objects back to their originating OUs. Michael, anything you would add to that?
Well, yeah, when you look at this, you can pull back any kind of administrative mistake that you can almost make in Active Directory, and this works fantastic as far as administrative whoopses. But what about disaster recovery? I mean, if somebody wiped out a DC, can I use this to bring it back?
Not really. It is at the object level. We do have applications that are focused on disaster recovery of Active Directory.
Okay, thank you.
No problem, no problem. Now, going a little further through it, I wanted to talk about, because there may have been some questions asked, and it's going to lead into another console, our Active Directory health. Unfortunately, now there may be people on this call that do own the health module, but the health module is an optional module within Active Administrator. But the reason I'm bringing it out is because primarily, since everybody on this call has Active Administrator installed, it is as simply as providing a key code for it. But what tings this off is if you go into the web console. I didn't realize Active Administrator has a web console. Well, the web console was primarily built for reporting and health components. That's what it was really built around. So if you open up the web console, and it will take you into the web console, and you will see about 20% of the reports. Wow, that's really not something so impressive. Why am I seeing so little within a web console? Why'd they build a whole web console? Because 80% of it was built around health. So if you open up the web console and log into it, you would see reports. Okay, but most of these reports are wrapped around health, which you would not see unless you have that optional module. Here, even in this test infrastructure, I can see I have 3 active alerts. We're monitoring Active Directory at the 4 framework levels of Active Directory. And what is that? That's forest, domain, site, and DC. You would be able to see what alerts are warnings, what are critical. You would be able to drill down through those alerts to determine what you want to be notified of. An alert you would see within the console. When you would want to be notified of something, then of course SMTP comes in, you would receive a notification of that. Michael?
What are those alerts based off of? I mean, we're getting alerts on some value, so where are those values coming from?
Those, would you believe, those values are based upon Microsoft's best practices. So if we take a look at specifically what I just said, those 4 levels of, here they are. Once again, not exactly in order because we chose to go, not hierarchical here. We went alphabetical. But forest, domain, DC, or site and then DC, or site then domain, site and then DC. But when you drill into these levels, you're going to see there's general collector information and what we're collecting at this level. Now, why this is something very easy to implement, it's already pre-configured. Well, I see we have a data collector for replication failures. Well, if I drill deeper into that, you're going to see it's enabled. Whereas all our performance counters are also enabled and also enabled for trending when it comes to it. You can see we're looking for replication failures every 60 seconds or subsequently 1 minute. Well, to every corresponding data collector, there has to be a corresponding alert. Because if we're just collecting the information, not doing anything, it's really not helping me in any way. Well, this is where the alerts come in. Now, here would be that corresponding alert for that data collector, once again enabled. 1 failure in a 2-minute period would generate a warning alert, whereas 3 within a 5 would generate a critical alert. And this is where we name remediations. So in this point, we call it a remediation instead of a response action. But here, you can set up a remediation as well. Or if you just simply wanted to be notified, you'd be able to set up a notification for it. You can see by the information that we're collecting, just when it comes to DCs, there's performance counters as well, Windows services, there's validations, and all of them are enabled. There's 3 events in the entire application that are not enabled, and they all have to do with global catalog latency, which enabling them is best suited for troubleshooting purposes only.
So Neil, these alerts that come in, being in the industry for a few years, I know that most of the DCs are not the same. And so if you toss one blanket of settings across your entire domain, that could cause some issues because of performance levels of the different DCs. Are those counters and alerts adjustable?
100%. The counters and alerts are done that way, but you can, and you may have noticed something here, if I go back to it, called templates, where you can build a template. You can see within this test infrastructure, I have a 2019 domain controller, a 2012 domain controller. Well, it might be logical to assume that my 2012 DC is running on older hardware and might be more subjective to, spikes, RAM utilization issues, because I'm going to be changing that out probably by the end of the year. Well, I can create a template that just engulfs the customization settings or customized metric settings on just my 2012 DCs and have my 2019 DCs looking at a completely different level of configuration. So you can do that as well. Now, we mentioned the pooling agents with active administrator auditing, which allows one pool for 5 DCs. When it comes to health, it's one pooling agent for 25 DCs. That's another reason why it's very easy to set up quickly. You simply deploy an agent, as I do, on my Apps 5 server, and it is watching over both of my DCs. You can set up limiters as well if you're taking DCs down for a while. Well, I don't need to be bothered about replication problems to a DC that's down. No, I'll set up a limiter on that DC for 4 hours or so. But when drilling back to the Health Console, I did mention reporting, and I wanted to run through reporting for a quick sec because in this version, they probably doubled the amount of reports, and you can see just how many reports are here. Now, we are looking at the full complement of reports. Without the health license, you would only see a handful of these reports because a lot of these happen to do with trending reports and memory utilization. But very easy to be able to go into a report, just simply pull any report that you would want. Now, it's always going to ask you your domain name. Why? Because you could be running this across multiple trusted domains at this point. I would click Run, and now it's going to load up the report. So it's very easy to be able to see this information. You could send people out a report link. You can print it to a PDF if you want to. There are multiple views, like the NOC view, and I happen to like this view in the NOC because it shows you your active alerts and critical. If I wanted to go through this and see the details to this, I can see it right here. Now, I am just on the threshold of this. You can see it right now. It has to be greater than 60% for more than 2 minutes. Well, I'm averaging 68.08%. Okay, so I'm just over that threshold of creating a memory usage issue. That's how come it's only done as a warning alert. Very easy. You can also create your own customized alerts if you want to as well. Just go into Active Directory Health Check and create your own. So the health component as well as included. We're up at about 15 minutes before the hour. I did want to pause here because I did want to see if questions, Q&A is coming in as well. I also want to take this one moment for one quick second and bring down another slide here. Yep. And just say if you enjoyed today's presentation, by all means, feel free to visit SurveyMonkey link. I know here at Quest, I think you would think we have ownership stakes inside of SurveyMonkey. That's how many SurveyMonkey surveys we do throughout the month. But I want to thank everybody for their time today. Hope this was beneficial. As mentioned, Michael and myself are certainly going to stay on for QA for, probably about another 10 minutes or so.
And if you do have any questions, now's a good time to fire them off, and we'll answer those to the best of our ability. If not, we'll take it offline and find the answer for you. But we do rely on our surveys as far as delivery and content. Please fill that out. Let us adjust these for you. So not only can we educate you, but entertain you along the way. We do appreciate your time.
Yeah, and if there was any interest in evaluating the health module, reach out to your account executive here at Quest. They will be able to get you out a key code to enable that feature.
And Christopher, you asked whether or not the GPO management can be seen in the Active Directory Health module. Since you replied, the answer is no. The GPO module is part of the core Active Administrator license. If you contact your AE, we'll be more than happy to give you an evaluation license so that you too can experience those GPOs capability and everything else that the Active Administrator has to offer. So if you do have any questions, feel free to enter those in the chat. Anil, we have a question. What are the key differences within Quest Active Role Server? You want to take that one?
Sure, not a problem. Active Role Server tends to be more of a framework for a one identity solution. So if you're looking to implement an identity access solution, Active Roles tends to be a framework solution for that. But where Active Roles differs than Active Administrator is doing everything within its console level directly into Active Directory. It's utilizing native Active Directory credentials, whereas Active Roles works as, in essence, as a proxy in front of Active Directory. It's using a singular service account to carry out all those changes. So even a domain admin, by default, has absolutely no rights within Active Role Server. It has to be delegated. Then Active Role Server builds upon that by giving you the ability to create complex provisioning policies and deprovisioning policies. It also has connectors into many back-end platforms for automatic synchronization into Active Directory. But it tends to act as a framework for it. There's not much inside of it from a management of Active Directory. It's really just managing the security and the provisioning and deprovisioning of it.
Thank you, Neil.
No problem. No problem. We dealt with that application for a very long time. At one point, Active Role Server was considered a hybrid application within the Quest portfolio. It was the only application that was handled by two business units. It was handled by our One Identity business unit, and it was handled by our Microsoft Platform Management business unit, which is the BU that Michael and myself are associated with. About 3 years ago, that application moved exclusively to our Identity Access portfolio. That's why Michael and myself know the application so well, because we did work with it for many, many years.
So the bottom line there is the Active Role Server is a provisioning, reprovisioning, deprovisioning solution, where Active Administrator is that Swiss Army knife for managing Active Directory. Would that be right, Neil?
Yeah. It also has a huge focus on security.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions? We love these questions.
Based upon what part of the country you're from, or even any country, that's why we bring on myself and Michael to handle this. You know, he speaks a little more with a little bit of a southern accent, and I speak a little bit more with a northeastern accent. So we try and cover both proximities of the country. Any other questions at all?
All right. So since the questions are a little bit slow, Neil, there's a couple other sections that we can just briefly talk about within Active Administrator. As part of the Active Administrator, what I call core, the main license, there's other features that we did not touch on for an administrator, really handy to have. We have the ability to look at the infrastructure and the replication and test the replication and the links in between the DCs in case anything is going south or not working. Mm-hmm. We also have the ability to connect to DCs in one interface, and in that connection, you can have a performance monitor on a tabular basis You can manage your services. You can stop, start, restart that DC if you need to do so. But it gives you the ability in that one interface that's going to show you a problem with the Active Directory health. You can dive into the DC itself and see what's going on with that DC. And of course, getting to the event logs, I'm an old log diver from way back. Being able to get to any of the event logs quickly makes an administrator's life very easy. It doesn't matter what the log is, whether it's an extended log, we can pull all of that data out, and we can rifle through that data. And then there's the DNS component. Now, this was a for sale module that is now free with the Active Administrator Core. This is pretty much a restatement of what DNS is doing natively, but on top of this, not only do you have the standard DNS management and the ability to add and remove objects, but you can monitor DNS, you can monitor the replication of DNS. You have the ability to point to a DNS server and query it for a return set of information. And this is little used until DNS doesn't work. And I had the luxury of the experience of working with a DNS expert who happened to fat finger a single entry in DNS and couldn't find it. And we used this solution and went and found that one entry. And the gentleman was quite thankful because he didn't have any tools or any way that he knew to go out and find that errant DNS entry. So this is a nice to have if you have a large environment that has multiple DNS servers that are complex.
Yeah, no, well put, Michael. There's a lot of features. We really wanted to focus today's presentation on what you might not know, kind of hidden features within Active Administrator that might require a right mouse click at certain areas, maybe drilling to a menu that you don't always see at the top.
All right, and so what we're really trying to do is pointing out all the things you didn't know that you had right in front of you with the tools that you have. There's a lot hidden in the right clicks and different menus within this system. So as you use it going forward, you see something that you haven't clicked on before, don't hesitate. You might find something you'll find extremely useful. Neil, back to you, sir.
Yeah, no. And I just try and reiterate, if you have any questions for, Active Administrator, does it have this capabilities or anything along those lines, don't hesitate on reaching out to your AE. Tech support is very qualified, but tech support tends to get bogged down in break fix to a degree, much more. We also have a tremendous knowledge base articles on Active Administrator. Hey, we need to move our Active Administrator server. How is that done? Or we just need to move the database. We have a lot of knowledge base articles on our website that are associated with Active Administrator. Active Administrator is an application that's been around for a long time. So there's been a good library built up on this product. So if the question needs to get funneled over to myself or Michael or anybody else on the team, no problem. The AEs are usually very good at coordinating stuff like that.
Correct. And usually when you think about Quest, if it's break fix, it goes to support. If it's a how-to, it comes to the engineers, and we're more than happy to help you figure out what's going on and how to implement it.
But with 5 minutes left, I do want to thank everybody for their time. I always like to get that message across. And if there are any last questions that we have, please feel free to type them in. If no questions, no worries. Always plenty of resources to be able to answer that question. Eric, did you want to come in and say any last words?
Yes, thank you for joining today's session, and thank you to our presenters, Neil and Michael,